giving me the honor to host this event tonight. And of course, thank you to Captain, Rabbi, Dr. Noteh Glogauer. It's 3 titles in one for giving his time tonight. I know you're a busy guy, and it's not easy to make this kind of time, so we appreciate that. And I'm just going to introduce myself here. So for those who don't know me, my name is Rabbi Ukashi. I'm the National Director for the League for Human Rights of B'nai Brith Canada, Canada's oldest national independent Jewish communal organization. More importantly, though, I'm a lifelong fan of Chabad. I went to Chabad summer camp, Chabad winter camp, Shabbatons. It's always been a big part of my life, so I'm very excited to do this. And a second thing that people should know about me that not everyone does is that I also served in the primary reserves of the Canadian Forces in the Signals Regiment in the early 2000s. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for the military as well. And yeah, I very much look forward to this conversation. I'm as excited as the rest of you are. So with that, that's enough about me. And now I'm just going to go into a little bit of housekeeping here. So you'll see there's a chat box in Zoom. We invite everyone to type questions in that chat box. After Rabbi Glogauer gives his presentation, we're going to have a Q&A period, and we'll go through the questions within the available time. So be sure to type your questions if you have any as they come to mind. And there'll also be a feedback survey that you should have received in your confirmation email for this event. Please make sure to fill out the survey if you can. Your feedback is invaluable in planning future events, so we'd really appreciate that. So enough about me. I'd now like to introduce Rabbi Dr. Arnold Noteh Glogauer. So I'm going to read his bio, and then I'm going to let him take it away. So Rabbi Glogauer was born in South Africa and immigrated to Calgary, Canada in 1977 with his parents and siblings. He graduated from Western Canada High School with an advanced bilingual diploma from the French immersion program, has a degree from the University of Calgary with majors in French language and mathematics, and received his rabbinical ordination from 2 eminent institutions in New York and Israel. He received his Master's of Science in 2004 in Educational Technology, and in 2007, completed his doctorate in Instructional Technology and Distance Education. He began his leadership journey as a school principal at the ripe old age of 29. Okay, so we see he's a bit lazy, I think. I don't think he achieves enough, but I'll go on here. He has combined his passions for truly reaching each child, striving for excellence in all he does, and inspiring those around him to do the same as a leader in 4 schools on 2 continents. Rabbi Glogauer has served as an assistant rabbi in 3 synagogues in Canada, the USA, and Australia, spanning over 20 years of formal communal leadership. Concluding his position as headmaster of a private school in Sydney for over 9 years, in 2016, Rabbi Glogauer released his book titled Never Give Up, A Journey from Class Clown to School Principal. Rabbi Glogauer is a committed lifelong learner, a journey he continues with his wife Chaya and his beloved children Esti, her husband Chaim, Yossi, and Rochel. Rabbi Glogauer is a regular force chaplain serving for over 3 years in the Royal Canadian Air Force at 17 Wing Canadian Forces Base Winnipeg, and he has recently been posted to the Royal Canadian Navy Canadian Forces Base Halifax, serving as the wing chaplain at 12 Wing Shearwater. So with that, I'll let the man speak for himself. Please, Rabbi Glogauer, take it away.
Thank you, Ron. Hope everybody, you can hear me loud and clear. Excellent. So I am very humbled to be part of what I understand is the last, at least for the season, the Fireside Chat hosted by Chabad of Winnipeg. I want to thank Rabbi Altine and for his initiative and for inviting me to take part of it. You'll hear a little bit of my story. I was very privileged to be posted to Winnipeg as Ron read, and I managed to spend as much time as I could with Chabad. It was truly a home away from home. So, I miss all of you, and I'm so excited to still be connected and definitely to share a little bit of my story with some of the people from Winnipeg. But I have to definitely, looking at the participants in the box, to see such a wide range of people who are taking part. And I see some amazing friends and people who I work with in Winnipeg. I see Shane, I see Terry, and I definitely need to make mention that the most important person is on the Zoom, who is my wife, who's in Toronto. Part of my story, hi Chaya, part of my story is that I got I got my posting message, and the beginning of COVID in the first week of March was sent packing, and I was fortunate to spend Passover Pesach with my family as I drove in the middle of the night from Winnipeg to Toronto, and then mid-COVID drove here to Halifax. And I see that some members of my Halifax team are here as well. I definitely see my supervisor. So it's amazing to see how many people are here willing to hear my story. So I'm going to jump in a little bit, and please, share some questions, join in. I want it to be interactive, but I thought, as opposed to just talking, which rabbis tend to do sometimes too much, I tried to create a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation that will tell a little bit of my story and will at least situate a little bit of who I am and how did I get to where I am today. My email's there, so feel free to take it down. And if you want to send me some, questions or interact even further at another time, please feel free. So let's jump into it. So this is my family. This was our eldest daughter's wedding last summer to Chaim. You see my parents who are with us, and it was a huge milestone for our family. One of the things I wanted to definitely share with you is that although I'm here and I try to tell everybody, I love my family, I love my wife and my kids, but it's been 5 months since I've seen them. Part of my journey, it feels that it's my journey, but it's actually my family's journey, because I could not be doing the things that I'm doing without the full support of my wife, my children, and obviously my parents. My parents play a large part in it, as you will hear a little bit later. But my parents are very much, have always been instrumental in everything that I've done, and especially from the military aspect, which you'll hear, they're definitely part of it. In the bottom right corner is a photo of me in 1990 as my wife and I got married. Next week, please God, will be my wife and my 30th anniversary. So we've been married for almost 30 years. And I tried to tell everybody, maybe I took it a little bit too literally when it spoke about the Jews traveling the desert, because since I've been married, we've lived in 14 different places. So we've moved around a lot. But that's part of my journey. Each place has been significant, but I wanted to share that one photo of me as I went by the Lubavitch Rabbi in 1990, because I've always felt that was a defining moment for me, because obviously I looked a little bit different than I do today, but that was a defining moment because it really shaped my understanding of what Judaism really is supposed to be about. And that message is something that I took to heart from that meeting, because I felt that I was so well received for where I was in my stage of my personal journey. And I felt that the Lubavitch Rebbe exemplified what it meant by the different people coming by and receiving a blessing for spirituality, for physicality, that it didn't make a difference where you were on the spectrum in terms of your observance. The Rebbe always pushed forward that there is much more that unites us than divides us. And because we all have that Jewish soul, that one connection, all of humanity is created in the image of God, we need to focus on that unity to drive us as opposed to our differences. And that always had a very huge effect and shaped me very much in my educational philosophy, and how much more so in my military ethos of who I am today. So I am actually direct generation military. This is a photo of my great-grandfather, who is here in the middle. I'm not sure if you can even see my pointer showing, but that is my great-grandfather in the First World War in a bunker. If you know a little bit about First World history, he was in the same bunker with Rommel, the Desert Fox from the Second World War, and Kesselring. My great-grandfather received the Iron Cross First Class twice, as well as Second Class, and those are two of these medals. My family always believed very much in being that idea that we have in Canada, country before self, country and upholding the values and the tenets of what it meant to be a patriot for your country always was in the DNA and the fabric of our family. In the top right corner is an heirloom that was passed from the Prussian Wars from my family in the early 1800s. A great-great-great-grandfather of mine took his helmet and was Hanukkah, and they beat the helmet into a menorah so they could actually light their menorah on Hanukkah. Obviously, later on, the family crest was further beautified, the helmet, but that was a functional menorah that was used by my family many years ago in the 1800s. So for me, my father served in South Africa. My grandfather on my father's side served in the Second World War of a South African all-Jewish unit that went up and fought in North Africa. And so for me, serving in obviously I'm the first chaplain to serve, but serving for my country is something within my blood. I want to share with you what I believe is probably one of the most defining moments of my life that definitely changed who I am and set me very much on the path of who I am today. In 2014, as I was a principal of a school for 10 years in Australia, I had the opportunity to take part in the March of the Living. That was about 20 schools from Australasia sent their principals on the March of the Living. March of the Living is a event that takes place every year. This is the first year that it hasn't taken place since its inception, where they recreate the march from Auschwitz I to Birkenau, which is about a kilometer walk that prisoners who were transferred from Auschwitz I to Birkenau were forced to march. That's me outside those famous gates. But I want to share with you exactly why it was such a defining moment for me. As we went to Auschwitz, this is a photo you can see of the actual synagogue in Auschwitz that was a preserved building that was actually used as a weapons ammunition depot by the Nazis. So it was absolutely preserved in a pristine state. The head rabbi of the synagogue in Auschwitz was a Rav Noteh Landau, who shares the same first name that I do. One of the biggest challenges I always had going to Hebrew school, the name Noteh, N-O-T-E-H, or Nun Tes Ayin, is a very strange Hebrew name. So much so that all of my Hebrew teachers wanted to change my name from Noteh to Natan because it just is such a strange name. It means planted amongst us. There was the first time in Auschwitz, in the actual glass case in the other part of the synagogue that's made into a museum, was this rabbi's book, and that's the photo that I took. So for me to see my name in print in such a building that was full of contrasts really hit home. And obviously, then moving on, one of the main buildings in Auschwitz I, you can see there are huge panels of names of people who ended up coming through Auschwitz with the date of their murder. And there I could see, I'm not sure if you can see on the left, is actually my name, where I could actually see from the person who I'm named after, for me to walk through that building and to see my name had a profound effect. And really, the challenges where I was at that time, I was a principal of a school in Australia for 10 years, having been a principal for 20 years. I just felt that I'd accomplished everything that I needed to. But the most defining event happened to be when we walked through the gates in Birkenau, which is the top left corner. We had met some yeshiva boys in Warsaw in the airport. And the boys, we were talking, and everybody does Jewish geography. Where are you from? Shalom Aleichem, Lechem Shalom. Hi, how are you? And one of the things that Jews do that is a very similar custom that Muslims do as well is when you're meeting somebody, you tell them Shalom Aleichem, peace unto you. And the appropriate response is unto you peace. So same thing in the Muslims in Arabic, they say salam alaikum, alaikum salam. So it's a very similar thing. And I heard this week from Rabbi Yossi Jacobson, who told a great thing. You know, we're so used to conflict. Conflict is within our genes, right? The whole oral law was based on discussion and conflict. So the reason why we begin, he says, the reason why we begin that confrontation, you know, Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom, why do we have to be different? So he said, okay, you know what? Let's get the disagreement out of the way. Now that we've disagreed, now let's focus on the peace, right? And for me, having met these yeshiva boys in the airport, you know, we did the geography, they went on their way. So just by coincidence, as we walked through Birkenau, the main entrance to Birkenau is called the Gate of Death. As we walked through the main gate, you know, there's a huge feeling just having done that walk. You know, you felt that, you know, here you are, we're full of emotion. You know, what's the greatest expression of my Judaism that I could express in this moment in probably one of the most destructive places, symbolic within our world, to daven mincha, to pray the afternoon prayer, which we need a quorum of 10, at least a minimum of 10 men or 10 boys past the age of 13. And that's what we did. So we counted off, we had exactly 10, and that's what we did. I said, what a better way. So we gathered and we prayed mincha. And for me, that was the greatest expression for the first time that I felt so united with all of the people around me. I laid a couple tours here, but that was a defining moment. And I want to share something that I heard, which was amazing. Just before Tisha B'Av, 3 weeks ago, Rabbi Israel Lau, the former chief rabbi of Ashkenazi Rabbi of Israel, he was on a call with a Zoom call with Rabbi Goldstein, the chief rabbi of South Africa. And knowing Rabbi Lau's journey, having been liberated in Buchenwald, then ended up emigrating with his brother to Israel, becoming the chief rabbi in Israel. And Rabbi Goldstein asked him, you know, what is the one message you could give the Jewish nation and the world today, having seen the atrocities and risen out of the ashes? What can you tell everybody? He said, I can tell you one thing. He said, the biggest problem we have is, he said, I saw it didn't matter what level of observance you were. If you were really observant, whether you're from a rabbinical dynasty or not, whether you were intermarried, it didn't make a difference. He said, one thing we Jews all learned in the Holocaust, we learned how to die together. He said, if I could tell them one thing, I would tell them, our folks, we need to learn how to live together. It's not about your different level of you are. I always say, which I try to explain to people in the military, you know, when they ask, you know, Jews, you know, who are, I said, look, labels are meant for clothing, not for people, right? We're all in it together. We're created in the image of God. We're here to be able to unite and to make the world a better place by focusing on our unity. Not the diversity creates the flavor, but it's about focusing on the unity. So I want to talk a little bit about the decision. So how did I basically become why did I become a chaplain? So it was 2017. I was the principal of a school in Australia, and we held an incredible ceremony for the Anzac soldiers. It was the 100th anniversary of Gallipoli. And with the Anzac soldiers, I met the first Jewish rabbi of the Air Force in Australia, Rabbi Yossi Friedman. We spoke, and it was just so inspirational. His message, there's a soldier from Vietnam who's on his right side. And I just felt, you know, educationally, I really felt that I'd done everything that I needed to, and I needed to embark on a new journey. I heard an amazing quote from Lubavitcher Rebbe that I felt just fit. You know, we talk about in military, everything has a mission. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, God doesn't ask you to fulfill a mission. God gives you tools to fulfill your mission. So I felt I had the tools ready. You know, I'd done what I needed to do in education. I wrote a book, you know, and I felt everything that I needed to, I could sum up in that book. But now it was time for me to be able to, challenge myself a little bit more, but try and spread that message in a new environment in the military. So I actually have, that is Rabbi Lazer Danziger, who is my mentor. He laid the foundation he's the first Orthodox chaplain in the Canadian Armed Forces after the Second World War. And he's the one who is presiding over my attestation ceremony in 2018. So this is an amazing organization, Aleph Institute. I was there this February. Those are all of the Orthodox chaplains in the American Armed Forces, in the 6 branches of the American Armed Forces. I had an opportunity to be able to represent Canada in that incredible event, and it created a great platform for me to be able to link up with other members who are also serving in the military. But it just, again, gave me an opportunity to recognize the incredible sacrifice that Jewish members are making within the armed forces in North America. This just gives you a little bit of an idea. I wanted to just at least share this. You have the opportunity to be able to read it, to understand what is it that a chaplain does, at least in Canada. We're a little bit different in America than America. Thank God. We have our mandate. And if I could sum all of that up, what is our mandate? It said the Canadian Armed Forces, our chaplains, we minister to our own faiths, we facilitate the worship of others, and we care for all. The difference between the Jewish faith and other faiths is that other faiths have a great base to be able to minister to their own. In Canada, where there's, right now, I have a database of about 75 Jewish members that I'm in contact with. So where I say the majority of what I do is I care for all, I facilitate the worship of others, and then I have a tiny little group that I'm able to minister to our own. So the majority of what I do is caring for all. So the history of the Jewish chaplaincy ministered to our own is very rich. This is a photo of Rabbi Samuel Kass. This is the first ceremony in Germany. In 1945 was the first ceremony. It was a Passover ceremony held by Rabbi Kass. I like to show this image because it is an incredible statement where, if you were to look today, we have about 70,000 members in the Canadian Armed Forces. If we understand the population today, that is way less than 1% of our population who serve. In the Second World War, where our population was about 168,000, over 17,000 men and women, Jewish men and women, served. That is that's more than 10% of our Jewish population served in the Second World War in all 3 elements, Army, Navy, and in the Air Force. So I want to talk a little bit about ministering to our own. And I saw that I saw Terry King, and I think Shane Budden might be on as well. One of the most amazing things of ministering to our own, I try and find ways within Judaism that we can create different events that connects to the rest of our faith, wherever they are, kind of uniting events. So one of the things that I did in my first year, I said to the deputy wing commander in 17 Wing in Winnipeg, I said, look, Hanukkah is coming up, the holiday of Hanukkah. It's a holiday of light. There's a tradition, at least in the American military, to light menorahs on military installations. So I'd actually like to light one in Winnipeg. So I will raise funds and we'll secure a menorah, and I'd like to find a way how to do it. So the deputy wing commander at the time said, no, Rabbi, you're the chaplain of MSS, Mission Support Squadron. Construction engineering, teaming, you have specialized workmen in those areas. You'll meet with them and they will build a menorah. And it just floored me, right? I thought, okay, I was a little bit skeptical. Well, I met with the engineering group and they built probably one of the most amazing menorahs that I could see. That first year, it was minus 28. When we lit, it took me about 20 minutes to actually light the first candle that the wing commander lit the shamish. Rabbi Altein was there, the Heidingsfelds were there, and it was an amazing event, because for me, when we actually were standing inside getting ready to warm up and to go outside, I looked around and I saw 10, 15 people who were with me in the wing commander, my wife and son were there. I thought, okay, it'll be a nice group with like 10, 15 people. We'll go out. And as I walked out, coming from their cars, coming from the mess, there were about 70, 80 people who were there who came to light the menorah with us, which was truly very heartwarming. And just showed that aspect of diversity being alive. And I managed to meet a few Jewish people members who themselves I didn't know about, but just drawing to the menorah brought some people out of the woodwork. Just a couple of things that we have. You can see that we now have a military tallis that's issued that we were able to make. Rabbi Danziger pushed for a CAD-PAD yarmulke, which we have. It's just an amazing idea that this concept of diversity is alive, but this respect for differences, which are mandates of the military, to find ways to represent the population within the military. So a couple of other different things that we've done. Every year I did a model Seder that was amazing. And if we have time in the question and answers, maybe someone will remind me of an incredible event that happened at the Seder by finding a Jewish member who came out of the woodwork at the Seder. I'm going to leave that to see who will remind me about that question. In the picture, you'll see these actually my commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Mills, and the wing commander. So one of the most amazing things that I was very humbled when I was here I received the wing commander's commendation. And in that commendation, which was incredible to see, there's actually a description of the spiritual diversity, including the model Seder and the Hanukkah menorah, which was recognized as significant events that bolstered the morale in the unit. And I just wanted to share, when we talk about minister to our own, it connects to everyone. I just want to share an email from when I thanked the wing commander. He said, and I could publicize the email. He said, I grew on my own faith from the example of devotion you displayed in yours. So by us making it, that's my understanding of what a Kiddush Hashem is. By sanctifying God's name, by being proud of who we are and spreading that message, everybody else grows through that devotion. So facilitating the worship of others. One of the most, obviously, taking part in Remembrance Day ceremonies. There are a lot of different things that we do. Change of command ceremonies. This on the middle left was the first time a Jewish chaplain has taken part in a ramp ceremony in Canada. And this was the ramp ceremony for Captain Casey, who passed away. She was the public affairs officer who flew with the snowbirds, who passed away this summer. It was a very humbling event for me, very emotional as well. But that's just part of the things that we do in terms of facilitating the worship of others and caring for all. It's in a diverse chaplaincy. There are many faiths. I'm very connected with the brother and sisterhood within the military. Just to show the care that we have for all. When I was quarantined, as I was making my way from Winnipeg to Halifax, the chaplain team, all my things were in transit. The chaplain team took time from their own schedules to schlep all of my boxes, all of my things into my apartment to get my apartment ready as I was making the drive away. So just to show the care that the chaplaincy have as we care for our own, but as well as caring for the wider group within our military. And of course, I would have to mention that one of the most amazing things, we get to play with some big toys. I've had a chance to be able to fly a Hercules, to fly a Griffin helicopter. So obviously there are lots of benefits and there are lots of fun, but it is truly one of the most rewarding things that I've ever been privileged to do. So that's the formal part, or at least the presentation part. And Ran, I'm ready to take questions and engage with those who are ready to jump in and ask questions.
Okay, wow. Well, thank you again for that story. That was quite a whirlwind and an amazing life experience and life trajectory, if I dare say so. So one question that I would like to pose actually is, so you grew up in Canada, you lived in Australia, your family comes from South Africa. What drew you to the Canadian Armed Forces in particular?
Right.
Was there?
Right. So, and it's funny, I write in the first chapter of my book, I was born in South Africa, and I was, my parents, my father, as I said, served in the South African Army, and my father tells a story. He said to my mom, he would never ever remain in South Africa for his children to have to serve in the South African Army. Yom Kippur War was still fresh in everybody's minds. In the late 70s, America, Vietnam was going on. So to move to Israel, for us to be able to have to serve, that my father didn't want that. He didn't want to move to America because of Vietnam. So he felt, the safest place for us to go was Canada. And when I decided that I was going to, I wanted to join the military, I wanted to serve. I wanted to serve in Canada because that's where my family was. My father, when we moved from South Africa, my father said he owed a great debt to Canada for having accepted us. It was very hard. My parents applied 3 times for visas to move from South Africa to Canada, and on the 3rd time they were accepted. My father became a blood donor. He felt that was his private way. And for many, many years, my father received awards. Gave an astronomical amount. Every time where every 6 weeks, my father donated. 6-7 weeks, my father was donating. And, I just felt that somehow for our family, I wanted to be able to give back as well to the country that had given me my education, even though I did my doctorate and my master's in the States. I just felt that everything that I gained was having been, privileged in Canada. So I wanted to give back, and I felt if I was going to serve, that's where I wanted to serve.
Okay. And you say that you always wanted to serve. Was this something you felt at a very young age, or did it come to you later after your career path? Or
it's a great question. My mother, every family, so the Jewish jokes, we had the Jewish doctor. That was my brother. He went into medical school. My brother became the doctor. So I didn't have to become the doctor because we already had one. Right. So, even though I joked, I felt that I had something missing as a nice Jewish boy. So I still at least had to get my doctorate. Maybe that's just the Jewish
counts.
My mother laid the Jewish guilt into me. But I just felt that, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
When it came to you that you wanted to join the army.
Right. So young, figuring out what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do in high school. But I was always very athletic. I played on, all major teams. I had a lot of success in sports at a high level. I told my mom, in high school, instead of going into university, I wanted to go into the military. And my mother said, which a lot of moms say, the military is not a nice place for a Jewish boy. So I'm changing that every day, though. I'm telling my mother, see, I told you things were going to be different. I have to say that very carefully, Jewish mothers. But that being said, I always had that desire to, from the just serving as well as the intensity, the experience. We never have regrets because where we are is where we're supposed to be. But I look around and I'm in awe. Our Lieutenant Colonel just retired from MSS, I think almost 30 years service, right? I look and I see there are people around me, to see their commitment to country, and the fact that people can disagree. The things that we can do today is because we have a strong military. And, all those people who've made that sacrifice and that commitment. It's not easy. It's definitely a little bit easier than it used to be. But my friends who've served for the amount of time they do, I'm in awe of them. I'm happy. I'm hoping that I can serve for as long as possible. But, it is what it is. But I definitely always had that desire.
Great. One question is coming in from someone who's participating in this event, they're asking, how do other chaplains support you during Shabbat? So I guess that's a good question. Is Shabbat a lonely thing for you? Do other chaplains come visit you? What happens there?
That's a really, really great question. So it was different in Winnipeg. Was very different to Winnipeg was very different to Halifax. So first, I'll tell you, I've always been privileged to be on the most amazing teams. I had an incredible team in Winnipeg. I have probably one of my closest friends today, Major Kevin Olive. He is truly, a great support system. I had an amazing chaplain, Laura Coxworth. She was one of the first ones who said, look, when it comes time to Shabbat, she took my duty for me. So I never had to actually take duty over Shabbat, although there were times where if there are certain ways to be able to save a life on Shabbat. And there are times where if we're in a theater of operations, obviously we're at war or we're being deployed, there are times where different halachas apply, different Jewish law applies, where the saving life supersedes the laws of Shabbat. And I was in a case where I had a member who was suicidal. And I I explained to him that, even though it's my Sabbath, if you need me, here's my number. I left my number on. And if he was to call, there would be a way that I'd be able to be in contact with him if he felt that, he was going to take his life, and I was able to connect with him. I've been having lived in right beside the base in Winnipeg. There were times where on Shabbat, they were able to knock on my door because I lived so close. I would walk over and still being able to engage on a Shabbat. Here in Halifax, they've created a very similar situation where the largest chaplain team in the Canadian Armed Forces is actually here in Halifax. Oh. So they're an incredible supportive team as well.
Okay.
I've been on duty twice. But when it comes to Shabbat, what I do is somebody else takes my duty. So before Shabbat, I transfer duty over. And then during the week, if there are other cases, I take those cases. If somebody took my duty on Shabbos, I would fill in for them during the regular week.
Okay. Maybe just very briefly for the benefit of some of the viewers, can you describe what duty means and what's involved in it?
Right. So chaplains are, so anyone who needs help can contact the chaplaincy 24/7. Chaplains are available 24/7. So just like a doctor in a hospital, one of the chaplains in the unit takes duty 24 hours. Normally duty is a 7-day block of 24 hours for 7 days. That anybody in the middle of the night can call this number. It's through a dispatch number that kind of triages the call. And then they call the chaplain to be able to provide support. If it's, and there's a wide range of issues that could come up, whether it's, God forbid, somebody who is potentially harmed to themselves. Yeah. Somebody's been arrested and needs support from a chaplain. There's a wide range. They would call that chaplain on duty who would provide that support for them, meet with them, connect with them, speak on the phone, and provide other support services.
Okay. Another question that's being posed is, how do you keep your associations with fellow Jewish officers and presumably Jewish personnel? And I guess I should take this as an opportunity to remind you that you might want to tie in your Pesach Seder experience story.
Very well done. Extra cookie for you.
Happy to help.
Or extra bagel for you. So I'll tell you, so one of the things that I do is by holding these events, I create a personal database of people who want to be in touch, who call me. I get calls all across Canada now of people hearing that there's a rabbi. Can you help me out? I need some help with this and that. So, and then I kind of form my own little database where I send out messages. The Canadian Armed Forces is amazing in that it allows Jewish members to take off for all Jewish high holy days, for all holy days. And there's a way that it doesn't have to take their annual leave as well. There's a specific process that we go through, and I assist those members with that process. So I send out a reminder. These are the dates. These are the times. Here's a briefing note that you can use to engage your chain of command. So I'm connected right now with at least 75, 77 members that I'm personally connected with. One of the things by having these events, I'll tell you, so at that Passover Seder, we sent out a message through various means, social media, that we're having a model Seder. Chabad of Winnipeg were incredible in helping me provide, matzah and wine, etc. So I had a member who came up. So after halfway through, one of the people, who she just came up and said, look, my name is Corporal so-and-so. I just wanted to let you know that, thank you so much for having the Seder. I know my name doesn't sound Jewish because I didn't know I was Jewish till 2 weeks ago. My mother passed away 2 weeks ago, and it's the classic story. Before my mother passed away, she called me into her room, and even though I was raised Ukrainian Catholic, but my mother never wanted to tell me and didn't tell anybody in my family, but I'm actually Jewish. So Rabbi, I'm here to be able to learn. This is my first Passover Seder. Can you help me? So I'm in contact with this member to this day. She lights candles every Friday night, has started to become much more observant in her way. And I connect with her every month or so, give her a couple books that she's reading and just, help her on along her way. She said, I'm not going to share her name. So I asked if I could share her story when I'm talking about the Passover Seder, and she definitely has given me permission to be able to do that. But that's just another example of, I'll tell you, I was in a training base in Gagetown, New Brunswick. And when I'm ever on my courses, so I'm allowed kosher food, encouraged kosher food. It's catered in. There's a specific way that we can warm up our kosher food, and that, according to Jewish law, there's a very special way by double wrapping, et cetera, just like one would on an airplane. There's certain ways that we're able to do it with stickers, et cetera. So as I'm standing in the mess waiting for my kosher food, 2 young boys come up to me, Rabbi, we didn't know that there are rabbis in the military. I said, yeah, here I am. So they said, yeah, amazing. So I said, well, where are you from? Because they come up to you and at the Israel, they say, Manishma, Shalom Aleichem. So then that, they got the Hebrew, thrown a few lines. 2 young boys from Chat, from Toronto, who joined the military because the military has an amazing program to be able to assist with their higher education. So they joined the military, and there was a SEALM program. So they were in a special program. So they're on my list as well. Right now, there's a second lieutenant who's he's in his last week of his field training. Orthodox young man. He davens in the field. He showed me a photo with him standing there in the middle of the field at dawn. I saw the sunrise. Somebody took a photo of him davening with talis and tefillin, standing in his little tent village with the rest of his platoon. So it's happening. We're there. I always felt that the Marines in America say no man left behind. When it comes for supporting our own, I say no Jew left behind.
So this is a question that I want to ask. So I'm curious as to what you'd find. I'm hearing a lot of the strengths, and it sounds like a very positive environment. You're really painting a positive picture here, which is, I'm glad to hear it. And I wouldn't suspect otherwise, to be honest. But I guess it's a fair question to ask, maybe from your perspective. What is the greatest challenge you find, or challenges you find, not only being a chaplain? I can only imagine the kind of things you come across, but being an observant Jew in the military. I don't want to be presumptuous, but serving in remote Canadian Forces bases, far from Jewish communities. What would you say are your biggest challenges?
Yeah, look, obviously I'm painting a rosy picture. There are hardships. Right. I have to tell you, when I went on basic training, waking up and trying to find how am I going to daven when the bus was leaving at 3:30 in the morning to be able to take us out. When am I davening? How am I catching my kosher food? There are times when I've been on training exercises where my food just didn't show up. Right. So and that happened. They're one of the training institutions amongst my chaplain friends. They know isn't, hasn't been so great in having kosher food always at the ready. So, I mean, thank God for whether it's cornflakes or, or fresh fruit. One of the things that I'm really pushing really hard, I've made it very clear that my goal is, I'm hoping, please God, next year to be transferred into the fleet, to be assigned to a ship so I can actually be deployed within the Navy. Because for the same reason is that there are hardships everywhere, but it's also attitudinal, right? I mean, wherever I've been, you'll read in my book, I mean, anti-Semitism is everywhere. There are racial challenges everywhere, but I always believe it's our attitude of how we approach those challenges. I mean, even this member who I told about, not everybody's excited, you're taking time, everybody else has tasks and he's taking time to pray. So in the beginning, not everybody's excited about him, at least they weren't, him taking time off, but it took a little bit of education, a positive attitude, and how to be able to, create new opportunities. Look, I'll be honest. I mean, it's been 5 months since I've seen my family.
Right.
So I'm not deployed right now. So if I'm deployed, that's one thing. I'm not deployed, but in the COVID situation right now where I came, I haven't seen my family since Pesach. So it's a little bit of a challenge, right? But, I know it's the cliche of the half full or half empty. I can look at the challenges, Shabbos is, Shabbos can be a lonely time. I mean, I try and insert myself within the Jewish community. For example, right now, the rabbi of the Orthodox synagogue here, Rabbi Kerzner, has been away. Thank God he's had a simcha, so he's been away and then self-quarantining. So I've been helping and serving as the rabbi, giving, the sermons and davening and trying to help out within the community. So you have to make those connections where you are. I think that's the part about Chabad that really, the Chabad philosophy is that, we don't just sit and wallow in the mud. We need to pull ourselves up and we need to make it something, right? It's about that mission, right? That God gives us the tools to perform our mission. So I could look at all the challenges and I could look at how difficult it is, but that's not going to get me anywhere. And that's not going to help me be what I'm supposed to be. I just don't believe that that's how I was created and that's what I'm here for.
I have to say, someone's commenting saying that they remember that week of cornflakes and fresh fruit. So someone sympathizes with you.
Look, I'll tell you something, and I saw some of my really close friends that I see, Marie Claire's there. At times, my personality is, it's okay. I'll survive. Let's not create, I don't want to create, a storm. And their greatest advocates for me and for me to serve within my faith and have my own faith represented have come from the chaplains around me. So I've had people and friends who've encouraged me and pushed really hard for me to make sure that whatever I needed to have was in place. So I give them great credit. It goes to I just think that, I could get on maybe it's my soapbox, or maybe I've been all night on my soapbox, right? I can say that there's an incredible camaraderie. I tell everybody that, we all bleed green, right? We all wear the same uniform. We also bleed red for our flag, right? We're all a united family. And, I look to see, it pains me to see what's going on in the world today. It really does. In America, it doesn't matter where you are, even here in Canada, it pains me. But the hope that I have is that I look to the left and the right and I see people around me who are willing to sacrifice themselves for the common good that is what our country stands for. And, we have challenges and we'll always have challenges, but there's something about uniting together and looking at the positivity as opposed to the negativity that is a driving force for me. I have to tell you, even with Shabbat and the time that I have, there are a lot of different things that I've managed to take on within myself that I wasn't able to do before, right? I started relearning the Talmud every day because I have time now. I can wake up when I do. So I wake up really early in the morning, So I'm able to learn extra things that normally I wasn't able to learn before. So my private learning has increased. My physical fitness has increased because it's mandated, right? So I think spiritually I'm healthier, physically I'm healthier. It just would be nice to see my family a little bit more.
Sure. Can you tell us a little bit about the class clown part of your experience? You said from class clown to rabbi. What happened as a class clown? What was that like?
Yeah, so so those people who've gotten to know me a little bit, especially those who've been in my classes, there sometimes when things get a little bit, I won't say boring, but I always had to try and liven things up a little bit. So there are a lot of different things that I've done in my educational career to kind of push the envelope. I've always pushed the envelope. I've found different ways to be able to, whether it's self-entertainment or just to keep me engaged. Maybe I always said I had like ADD or ADHD, or, I just could never sit still, got me into a lot of trouble. But, I flipped it. I really flipped it around from an educational perspective because I understood the kids who didn't fit in the box. Right. I think the education, what really changed things for me is the education system, I think, to be able to, survive, had to clump everybody together. And that didn't work for me. And what I realized very soon is that I could affect systemic change by becoming a principal and doing it, to quote old Frank Sinatra, to do it my way. Right. Especially in a Orthodox yeshiva system, I felt that the boys who were sitting down early in the morning to pray and then to learn, and the day was, 8-9 hours long, and I felt that they needed to have more exercise. I think they needed to have more competitive environment. So in Australia, we created a rugby team that became incredibly competitive. Obviously, rugby is my passion. So sport became a huge outlet, which we changed things drastically in the school that I was in, created an incredible fitness program for our girls as well. We did a lot of different things that really pushed the envelope in learning as well, where some traditional schools, Orthodox schools, might not necessarily have taught Gemara. That's something we embraced in the schools that I was principal with as well. So I just found ways creatively, with a lot of sense of humor, to really just push the envelope where we could.
Okay.
But I didn't want to, spoiler alert, I have a lot of stories, but that's why I figured, to write a book and let them read them in the book. There's my plug. You got on Amazon.ca or from my house.
Read the book, everyone. Yeah. Were you ever deployed with Canadian Forces?
So that's a great question. I have never been deployed. There is a stat that I think that says that, which we at least heard in one of our questions, that less than 2% of chaplains are deployed. It is a really, really small percentage. But that was actually one of the reasons when I met with my Major Kevin Olive, and we spoke about, once I became fully qualified, I had the opportunity to be able to post to a new base. And I asked to specifically come to Halifax to the Navy because there are more deployment opportunities through the Navy on ships. And I figured that would be the only way for me to truly experience the full military experience, as well as demonstrate that an Orthodox Jew, an observant Jew, or a member of a diverse faith can be deployed in any setting, no matter where they are. So I wanted to be part of that process.
Okay. So with respect to being a chaplain then, is there ever an instance where you have to provide, it seems like you've provided emotional support for people who maybe are going through crisis, as you said, when you kept your phone on Shabbat in the case of the emergency. Are there ever situations where you have to maybe, for lack of a better word, minister to another religious minority where they might be lacking their own faith representation somewhere?
So, one of the things that chaplains do by supporting facilitating the worship of others, one of the things that the chaplains are used where we advise the chain of command. So there are times where members of other faith, for example, if a member of another faith felt that they I'll give you an example. When I was in Winnipeg, we had a member who was part of the Muslim faith, who had to wake up a little bit earlier to be able to pray, wasn't able to meet some of the timings within his unit line, as well as that by the time for him to be able to eat, well, so with Ramadan, the mess was closing and he wasn't able to get food. So what we did was we organized for the member to get boxed lunches, to get his food boxed so he would be able to still eat outside of, obviously after sundown, as well as work within the chain of command to get them to understand what his parameters are and to make accommodations for him. So that member came to me and I liaised with his chain to be able to get those accommodations passed through. So that's just one example, but we do that often with a variety of different issues and different faiths. So just that as an example, I'm the wing chaplain in Shearwater. I have a chaplain who's new to the military who works under me, who I help guide and train, and he has some units that he works with, but I oversee his ministry, as well as have another chaplain who's with me a couple days a week as well. But otherwise, I'm the full chaplain for the entire Air Force wing. So you can imagine the different faiths that are within that environment, and they come and see the rabbi, regardless of what their challenges are, and I help and support them through whatever issues that they have.
Oh, okay. So it really is like, it sounds to me, not to be presumptuous, but you wake up in the morning, you don't know exactly what's going to happen that day. It's not like you're doing like infanteer training or you're doing comms training where they say, okay, you're working on radios, you're cleaning rifles, you wake up and you find out what's happening that day 9 times out of 10.
And how exciting is that, right? I mean, I think that's the most, we call it, they call it in the chaplain military terms, ministry of presence, right? Our goal is to be there in the lines with the members so that they can see you, so that when things come up, good or bad, they know that you're around. One of the great chaplains, Padre King, used to say the role of the chaplain is to just show up, right? If you are there, things are going to happen. If you are open, they'll engage with you. And I find a lot of, one of the most amazing things that I started doing this year is that every chaplain has a little bit of a gimmick, right? So I had, I didn't really, I'm kind of new, just, 3 years in. So I didn't know if I really had a gimmick. So one of the things that's amazing here in Halifax is they have a a fully kosher bakery that has incredible bagels, 4 different types of bagels, different types of cookies. It's amazing. So one of the weeks I thought, okay, you know what? I'll just go and get a dozen bagels and just bring bagels for headquarters, right? Well, I didn't realize that was like probably one of the most amazing things that I've ever done. And it just became every week. So now every Friday I go and get 4 dozen bagels. And I just take them all over the wing, just to my 4 different squadrons that I have, just connecting to the chain of command, saying hi to people, just delivering bagels, right? And it just became like my gimmick to be like the bagel man, right? But it's just an opportunity just to be able to connect. And then the relationships that I've formed already in just 5 months' time have been incredible with a lot of different challenges. I mean, just to mention one, if you're aware of what happened in the news in April, one of the maritime helicopters on the Fredericton in the Mediterranean had a horrific accident where 6 military members passed away. That was a helicopter in my squadron, in one of the squadrons that I serve in Shearwater. It was an extremely difficult time, one of the most challenging times that I've ever had. But just being there, the humbling experience of helping members through one of the most tragic events is, one of the most amazing opportunities to really wanting to be in the moment, wanting to help people. I couldn't find a more humbling and more privileged platform.
Okay. There's a question also regarding training. So I know when someone joins the military, there's the basic military kind of qualification, soldier qualification, the basic training, basic recruit training courses. Yeah. As an officer, I think you have what's called common army phase training. All officers go through the same kind of common army phase training. But what does qualification training look like for a chaplain? What's the ongoing training? What do you, is it things like if you go and you do more like outside the Army training, or is it something that they provide you uniquely, a combination of both?
So it's changed over the past few years. It's changed. I can tell you what it is now, and then I can tell you what I went through.
Okay.
What it is now is that it's called BMOQ, Basic Military Officer Qualifications. That, let's not talk about COVID situation. I mean, it's very complicated now with COVID, but if it wasn't COVID, it would be approximately 12 weeks in Saint-Jean, in garrison in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu in Quebec, where the chaplain is inserted into a platoon with everybody else who has to go through the same basic military officer qualification course. The only difference is that chaplains, we do not, through the Geneva Convention, we do not bear arms. So we do not do formal rifle and arms training. We do need to know how to be able to disarm a loaded weapon. And that is just, obviously you can imagine from a safety standpoint. So there are other things that we do during that time. So after those 12 months, then there are 4 major courses that a chaplain needs to take to become fully qualified. There's an ethics course, there's a counseling course, there's a chaplain in deployment operations course, and I'm missing one. I know that I'm missing one.
You haven't taken it yet, maybe.
And then there's a purple face course that is oh my gosh. And there's a specific 4-week chaplain course that is just surrounding chaplain doctrine, that is just for chaplains.
Okay.
Almost.
And then once you complete that, you're complete.
Right. So once you complete it, so what they've done is pre-COVID, they tried to cram that into 13 months. During my time, it was a 2-week. I wish. It was a 2-month process. It was a 2-year process. So it took me 2 full years to be able, it's called BTL, basic training list, to come off the basic training list to be fully functional. Took me 2 years. Now you could do it 13 months, but COVID, only God knows how long that's going to take now.
Okay. So, I think, in winding down the event tonight, I think one question that I'd like to pose would be, what would be the one piece of advice? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and I understand that, but do your best. What would be the one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's considering enlisting in the military, and they come to you for advice, and they want to say, I want to join the military, what should I know? Yay or nay? What do you say?
I would tell them to make sure they go through a real discernment process, to have a real driving force on why they want to join the military. It's not for everyone. And they need to have that commitment, because there are low times, especially during training, right? There are low times, and they need to have that as a driving force. And then I would say to have a very strong supportive mechanism, whether it's parents, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a partner. They need to have that support. There's a lot we say, military first, family always. Family needs to be there, because wherever you are, you need to have that, that driving force behind you and that support during the lows. There are highs as well. I mean, that's very rewarding, but, I would really ask them, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. A paycheck and a pension, I don't believe are the right reasons to be, although there's a nice, it's a good, decent paycheck and pension. That should not be a driving force for joining our military.
But it's definitely worth mentioning, as you just did, right?
I don't think anybody's, in today's world, I don't think anybody's complaining about a regular paycheck. Sure. But I will tell you that, for me, there's something about standing and, whether swearing in or the attestation, that you're there to be able to, take on those roles and responsibilities of protecting our country, standing up for what our country believes in. For me, that needs to be a driving force.
Wilson, thank you very much for that sentiment. I can say, someone who's been in the Army Reserve, I was in for 6 years. Very dear friends who are still in the military regular force. I very much share that sentiment, and I appreciate the sacrifice. I see them moving around. I've seen them being deployed. I've seen the hardships. I've had a candid, private conversations with them, and yet they still get up and do it day by day. And I very much respect those who've made it a career and have committed their lives to it. And you're right, it's not about the paycheck. There are other pursuits they could have taken, and they chose to do so for, again, love of country, a deep respect they have for the institution and what it represents. And it's not just war fighting. You know, they do domestic operations, they do humanitarian operations, and that's the real stories that I hear from people who I know who are in the military. And I see that same spirit through you and your words and your sentiments. I want to thank you again for your service to Canada and for your commitment to the chaplaincy. It's a very important office. I myself I've availed myself of the services when I was in. I got a Sidur, and I got hooked up with a Jewish family for Shabbat in Brandon, Manitoba. So I was very appreciative of that. And I can't recommend it enough. And thank you again. And thank you for your time and for sharing your story. I really much appreciate it. You sound like a very busy person. If I had more time, I'd ask you what you do for leisure, but I don't know if you have leisure time. It doesn't sound like you possibly could. But if you have any final words, maybe you can send out final words, and then I'll pass it over to Jenna.
Sure. So I just want to say, as I quickly just scroll down the list of participants this evening, I mean, I'm truly humbled to see the people from near, I mean, I can say near and far, people from Halifax who still stayed up. You know, my supervisor is even still on, Padre Dennis, and to see friends near and far, it really touches me that you're interested in my story. And, you know, please reach out to me if anybody, you know, wants to engage further. But really, huge yashikach all times to Shmuley, to your parents as well. Your support while I was in Winnipeg, the spiritual support that I got from your family and for Chabad of Winnipeg really helped me situate and to be everything that I could be. I'm truly grateful to your family and to Chabad of Winnipeg for the amazing things that you do. It just goes so far in building the neshamas where they are. Truly no neshama, I should say, it's no neshamas left behind, no souls left behind. But for all of my friends and family who've jumped on, thank you so much, and a shout out to my wife.
I'll just jump in here for a second, Rabbi. You are truly a beacon of inspiration. I very much enjoyed your presentation, and I'm sure everybody did. And I want to just personally say thank you for your service and for all of the sacrifices that you make each and every day to continue to do what you do in serving the community and serving people in so many beautiful ways. And I also want to shout out, if you're ever in Winnipeg again, we'll be here at Chabad to welcome you with open arms.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. And God bless. And everybody should be signed and sealed for only good. As we're in the month of Elul, it should only be a spiritually uplifting time for the entire world.
Great.
Jenna?
Thank you again.
Thank you, Rabbi and Ran, for an insightful presentation and great facilitating, of course. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And yeah, just one more reminder to fill out the survey in the Fireside Chat email sent out earlier today. And stay tuned for more programs this upcoming year. Okay, everyone have a great night.
Take care.
Take care.
Shana Tova.